Hello everybody, my name is Javante Scott, and over the course of this semester I've had the opportunity and the great privilege to journey with you through this public policy and leadership course in the public policy and administration program. I chose to do my case study for this semester on an issue that was brought before the St. Petersburg City Council. It was an ordinance amendment to Ordinance 541, Section 4-31, Part F. It was to amend the ordinance to allow fowl on certain city property, more specifically, chickens. In 2017, at that point, two grocery stores had shut down, closed, and been taken out of the Midtown community. That community got together and they determined what it was that they wanted to do to help resolve the issue of a food desert in their community. They needed a source of grocery. Their community was experiencing a scarcity in nutrition and food. So what did they do? They got together, they talked, they discussed, and they chose to create a youth farm. This farm, once the idea was to create the farm, the question then became, where are we going to put it? And they got together and said, well, let's use the rec center. Community Rec Center is the Enoch Davis Rec Center there in the Midtown community. That's where the youth farm is located. COVID happened, and so they didn't get to really jumpstart the youth farm as they would have liked. But now, since COVID, post-COVID, the youth farm is up and running. The youth are working the farm, and city staff there at the Enoch Davis Recreation Center are helping. So, how did we get to an ordinance about chickens? Well, the staff, they wanted chickens, the staff of the rec center who help the youth farm. The youth farm does a market where the youth get to sell what they've grown in the garden and in the farm to the residents. They are helping to fulfill that need of that food or nutritional resource. And so the chicken concept, idea, the thought, the desire came when staff realized we need to do more. We got more that we can do. There's more we want to do. Just got to find out how to do it. They had conversations with Mayor of St. Petersburg, Kenneth T. Welch. They had conversations with the chair of the St. Petersburg City Council. Her name is Brandy Gabbard. And when they had these conversations, what they discovered was that there is a conflict. Chickens are not allowed on certain property, public property, city-owned property, per Ordinance 541 Ordinance 541, Section 4-31, Part F. So, due to the conflict, that's where my item comes from. For the case study, I was privileged to meet with the Planning and Development Services Director, Miss Elizabeth Abernathy, who shared with me her idea, definition of an ordinance. She said it is simply a local law. She put it just that simple. I then asked her, what is the process when a resident has something they want to do, but they realize there's a conflict with the city ordinance? What is the steps from there? How does that turn into an ordinance amendment? Director Abernathy shared with me that that's exactly what happened in this issue. She and her department were notified by city staff who wanted these chickens at the youth farm, and when they realized that that couldn't be done because of the ordinance, that's when planning got involved. And so what did they do? They looked first to see what is the issue? What is it that the residents want? They want a chicken. Second, they had to determine, well, they say it's a conflict. Where is that conflict exactly found in the city law, the city charter, the city constitution, or in the city ordinance? And they found it in two separate sections of two separate chapters, chapter 4 and chapter 16 of that same code. And so they had two things they had to do. They had to try to mend both of those together, but also they had to do all of this while doing their very best to make sure that allowing these chickens on certain property would not, that the language would not be changed in a way that it would become so broad that they'd have chickens just roaming the streets of St. Petersburg. Some of the key stakeholders, as a matter of fact, all of them, Chair Gabbard, Brandy Gabbard, Chair of the St. Petersburg City Council, the Mayor, Kenneth T. Welch, those two individuals were leading the charge from an elected official capacity. They were all for it. The community, Chair Gabbard, said was all for it. They wanted it. As a matter of fact, they had chickens they were already preparing to have on the property should the council have passed the ordinance change. The employees of the rec center, the city staff, of course they wanted it. They requested this amendment to the ordinance. The youth, of course. I think we all know if we were younger, when we were younger, we probably would have loved to have some chickens to call our own. And then this process was not only something where they had to consider stakeholders, but they had to consider those who would want the chickens and then those who would not. So that language had to be very specific so that people couldn't just drop chickens off in the middle of a park, maybe Curtis Hickson Park, which is in St. Petersburg, and those chickens just run free. They had to make sure that there were some boundaries set. And so when this item comes before the council, if anyone was to want chickens on city property, they put into place a site plan. Site plan has to be done so that the planning department, the city staff can determine where these chickens and their coops will be placed on that property. They have to consult with certain individuals in the surrounding area to make sure that the city does not come into any other legal bindings and any other legal trouble, to make sure that that happens. But also, you want to keep everybody safe. All of this made my decision very easy. I had to make a recommendation, and so I stood before the council, as I do before you right now, my classmates, and say that I recommend approval of this item. I do so because the director shared with me something very specific to encourage you and I in our efforts in this governmental sphere of work. She said that part of our career in government is finding that balance between what is needed and what is wanted. Everything that's wanted is not needed. Everything that's needed, it's not wanted. These chickens, maybe not needed, wanted, of course. And so how do we find that balance? Because there are some who want them. There are some who don't. There are other cities throughout the county that don't have chickens. The city of Clearwater just passed an ordinance to allow chickens. Residents in St. Pete have always been able to have chickens, at least the past 8 years, always since Director Abernathy has been a part of of the planning department the past 8 years. And so that's the balance that you have to try to play. You don't want to be too strong or too hard, but you also want to make sure that you are doing everything you can to make sure that the community, the city is thriving, right? And then you have a job to do. So I recommend approval of Ordinance 541, Section 4-31, Part F, amending the code or the ordinance to allow fowl on city property, public property. I believe that this opportunity is very crucial at a pivotal moment in our nation's history and in the life of our youth. That developmental process is so important, and I know that because all of these youth are not going to go into the military, they're not going to go into college or post-secondary education. Some of them are going to go right back into that Midtown community after high school. What the city of St. Petersburg has done is they are preparing those youth to lead the way by grooming them, teaching them, creating and cultivating in them entrepreneurship minds, minds that will be creative thinking, minds of independent nature. They are creating in them servanthood. One of the most important parts of this whole government experience and government work is the part of service. The city of St. Petersburg has found a way to make sure that these youth see that when there's an issue in your community, who better to solve it than you? That's what this whole government thing is about. We learned in this particular class alone that residents expect for government to act, to be accountable, communicative, transparent. This is how they can do so. If the city is going to allow those grocery stores to go out, they got to bring something in. And they did so by allowing the youth farm to come into the Midtown community. And so I recommended approval. I today recommend approval. And down the line, I would still recommend approval of this item, amending the ordinance 541, section 4-31, part F, to allow fowl on city property. Here is my video of me standing before the council to make that recommendation. I hope you enjoy it, and to all of you, continued success. I hope for you good luck and congratulations on making it thus far.
You need like a flashing neon. Read the title.
Proposed ordinance number 541-H, an ordinance of the City of St. Petersburg, Florida, amending section 4-31F of the City Code, providing that fowl may be kept on certain city property pursuant to a duly approved site plan, and providing an effective date. And we do have one card.
All right.
Hi, good evening. Elizabeth
evening.
Abernathy, Director of Planning and Development Services, and I'm here with Mike Jeffries as well. I do have a brief presentation if council would like to see it, and then we're here to answer some questions.
Move approval.
Second. Second.
All right. Well, that answered your question. So we have cards.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Please.
Javante Scott, please go to an open podium. You'll have 3 minutes to address City Council. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening to each of you. Javante Scott, 1214 Fairburn Avenue, Clearwater, Florida. I'm standing tonight as a student of St. Petersburg College, studying Bachelor's of Science degree, Public Policy and Administration program. I want to say thank you to Director Abernathy for meeting with me just this past week to answer some questions. I chose this item as a case study for a public policy leadership course. And so I just want to show my support to you, the City of St. Petersburg, and to the Youth Forum, reasoning because of the possibility that it provides for the youth. I know, and I personally believe that residents, along with elders, along with government, has a responsibility to prepare youth for what is to come after high school. And what I know is that starts before they get there. And so of the options, one of those is the workforce. And for any government, it should be their hope and desire that those who enter into their workforce are prepared to do so. And so while all of these youth won't go off to college, they won't go to the military, some of them will come back into your community. And what you have done is provided them the opportunity to not only become independent, not only become or create with minds of entrepreneurship, but you've also shown them and created in some of them a heart of service to their community and showed them what possibilities lie within their own community. And so, along with your staff, I would ask and recommend your approval of this item. Thank you so much.
Did we have a second card? No, just the one? Okay. All right. So